Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transfer Show here on Anfield Index. I'm Trev Downey. I am podcasting to you from my field here in beautiful rural Ireland, and I'm joined by the man who always podcasts to you from the exotic climes of Edinburgh, Mr. Dave Davies. How are you, buddy?
Do you know what? You say that, but it's actually like the sun's gone in, but it's hot. You know, when you get that like
Oh, yeah.
jungle heat when it's just cloudy and overcast and humid, it's kind of gross like that. And that might even be Michael Edwards on the line for us. Who knows with an update? But
I just wanted to, we've got breaking news. It is interesting at the moment to find yourself living in the middle of the country in a field in Ireland and needing a fan at night. That's where we are. But people aren't interested in our levels of discomfort. They are interested in how uncomfortable we're making John Henry and his wallet. And it's a glorious time to be a transfer pundit, which is, I suppose, what you call us at the moment. And we'll start off with what happened and became real in between us speaking to our crew here the last day and today. In fact, it was within a couple of hours. It was 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock on the night when the first pictures started to filter through of Florian Wirtz. Now, I don't know if someone was taking the piss when they were saying this, but as a guy who's trying his best to stay away from the excessive amounts of online stuff that you're made to do during the season, if you're involved in the game, I saw someone say that they thought it was very low key. And I have to say, I thought it was quite low key as well. And then I got the impression that maybe he was taking the piss and he was getting flooded with stuff about Florian. What was your reaction to it? And is there anything that's come out about it in the interim that's sort of changed people's minds a little bit? There was a detail, wasn't there, about a payment to his family, which I thought was quite interesting.
yeah, it's a funny one, the way people perceive things, because I think it was 6 or 7, something like that on Friday, wasn't it? Whatever time it officially got announced. 6 is in my mind. But about 4 o'clock, people were like, where is it? Where is it? Where's it coming? And then 5 o'clock, there was it. And honestly, one comment made me laugh. Someone put about 10 past 5. It's Fakir Friday all over again. He's failed his medical. Yeah. Here we go. Back to the drawing board. It's like, oh my God, people. Type of thing, like, but we got it, and he did his, announcement, and a lot of people were looking for this to be like, I don't know what you call it, bells and whistles, weren't they? Bit braggadocious and everything like that. People talking like, will it be like the one where that player was on the halfway line playing the piano, or there's fireworks, and will he do Scouse impressions and all that? I actually think this interview and the way he does it actually summarizes the character. This is a guy who isn't braggadocious. He's just got that elite mentality and that focus. It was almost like the German version of Mo Salah for me, talking in the interview, saying, no, I want to win it all. I wanted to go to a top 3 team, as he said, in the world, and Liverpool was available. Yes, I had other offers, but Arne Slot convinced me because of where I fit in. Not the most riveting sort of spectacle or interview in that regard, but hitting all the right notes. And I find this funny, Trev, because other people will say, oh, it should have been more dramatic. This is a guy who's now, no, I'm in, I'm serious, I'm here to win. Elite mentality. We don't need all the bells, whistles, and hooplas. You can stick the title on your shelf next season and that'll do for you, type of thing, which I think's brilliant. There's just almost an understated seriousness to the way we've gone about this one and the way we're doing business. And I don't mind that. It just maybe a bit different to what we're used to. And if Florian Wirtz was a different character, hey ho, but he's got Frimpong by the looks of it to do his talking for him, hasn't he? He's the comedy one and the double act type of thing at the same time as well. So I actually liked the interview. I liked the style. Serious, understated, but elite mentality for me.
And I heard you say to David Lynch on your show this morning that, we shouldn't sleep on this either. That's why I wanted to bring it up and absolutely acknowledge it, because we spend the majority of our shows talking about things we'd like to happen. And when something as bloody fantastic as this does materialize, it's so it's kind of scary to see how quickly people just move on to give me the next thing. So it is important to take a breather and say, wow, we have ourselves a fantastic footballer. From a personal point of view, I will say there's one thing that, the mawkish sentimentality of previous interviews over the years, like, tell us why you chose Liverpool. Why is Liverpool your favorite place? That always just stuck in my craw. It's so needy. And I thought there was a sort of I think Gibbo wrote an article about where he focused on the idea of how there's a bit of a glint in this lad's eye. The idea you were talking about, that he wants to be a winner. And I don't care if nothing else happens. We've added Florian Wirtz to our squad. We are already better than we were last year, which makes us, and I hate to do it to you out there, makes us favorites for the title. Live with it, wear it, embrace it. We have a very, very big signing that every club in the world would want. He came to us. This is mighty stuff. Now, the kickoff from that, of course, is that there will be sort of knock-on effect. And, if you are going to outlay money, you must take money in. And interestingly, the club who we gave a lot of money to have given us some back in the form of another deal that's been done since we last spoke. This time outgoing, this time Jarell Quansah. I've heard you talk about this guy as well, and I think an awful lot of people were of the opinion that he was someone we didn't want to let go of. A lot of people rate him incredibly highly. I spoke about this in the Daily Red at length. I'm not going to go through my bits again like some kind of shite stand-up comedian every time he gets an opportunity. I will say this, maybe this could be embraced by most of the fans as a very good deal, particularly when we heard the little twist, Dave, that was put on to the end of it in terms of the provisions of any future sales.
Yeah, he's covered it for all of us, haven't they, Hughes and Edwards, in the deal they've done for this one, that it will always be guessing as to, and people have got different opinions, very different opinions, it seems, on what Jarell Quansah could be in the future, but he wants to take the next step. Great move for him. Leverkusen are in the Champions League, aren't they? And as usual, there's different amounts reported at the Leverkusen end, our end, but from the Liverpool side, it seems to be 30 million plus 5 million in add-ons is the deal agreed, but importantly, a buyback clause in there. And Romano was talking about this last night, that, even sort of if he does go on 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, suggestions are the buyback clause is around the 50, 51 million mark, because 60 million euros, translate that at Tesco's, about 51 million. So if he does go on to be what a lot of our fans seem to think he is, I'm not sure I fall into that camp in all honesty, but we're covered, aren't we? I honestly think this is a great bit of business. A 35 million package with a buyback clause for a kid who, this isn't being derogatory about him, made 4 starts in the Premier League, including one where he was taken off on the first day at half-time. I don't see it as bad business at all. You've covered yourself with the buyback clause. Good deal for me.
Yeah, I think that little buyback thing just made everybody smile in terms of, as you say, the key word there is cover. In case of any future embarrassment by Jarell Quansah turning into the greatest centre half in the world, well, we're covered. And, like you, I think he has the potential. Yeah. But I wasn't as high on that potential as a lot of people. So for me, this represents great business. And obviously, we're going to get on to how we're going to address the gap in our defense now, because there's more than one want away there. But we need to go straight to the other big story that everyone's going to want to talk about. It's the sexy story. It's the who are we getting as a striker. It is, of course, based on outgoings. Now, if we can ask people to be patient, and we'll talk about some of those outgoings later on in the last section of the show rather than the Liverpool section, because they involve other clubs. And not only did they involve other clubs, but one of them, who some of our outgoings may be headed towards, also involve a potential coming back the other way. So it makes sense to wait there on that. But let's talk about this number 9 ongoing overt interest, which has been acknowledged by all the big guns saying, yes, Liverpool are into this. Everyone you've spoken to said this is serious. You may not want to believe it. You may think it's bollocks, but no, we have interest in Alexander Isak. We have interest and have made a contact with and gotten a nod of approval from Hugo Ekitike. Is there anyone else in this mix at the moment? I saw some Julian Alvarez gossip today. You and I were talking about it, but it felt to me like a story out of time, actually. I don't know if it was just, sort of reinvigorated by someone who was looking for a bit of copy on a Monday morning.
Yeah, we read that story, didn't we? It almost felt like the guy writing it was just short a paragraph in the Atletico Liverpool link and thought, how can Julian Alvarez, that's it. That's an old, well, there you go. There's my copy journo editor, Jordan type of thing. It felt a bit like that. I mean, we've been clear across this all summer. Is Alexander Isak Liverpool's top striker target? Yes, that's still what we're getting told. They still think there's a chance, like the Jim Carrey meme. Do we think it's realistic? Do we think it's probable? Absolutely not. But we always say with this show, we tell you what we get. That's the job. That's how we see it, and you take what you want from it there. I do think this will ultimately not happen. The only thing that I'm finding interesting more than anything, Trev, is if you look at the timeline in the last few weeks, it's always been Newcastle. Not any price, forget it. Not a chance, not interested. Yet the Geordie patch journos in the last week or so, which is on the screen, have just changed that a little bit to say, well, it'd have to be 150 million to at least get to the table. And maybe it's not the biggest change in the world, but it's the fact they're talking about a price, which is usually, as we know, where the games start ultimately. So still don't think it's realistic, but it's just an interesting tweak in the story to mention. So again, don't expect it, but see if anything unfolds with that one. I mean, this keeps coming up, and we've said again, time and time again, that Hugo Ekitike wants to come to Liverpool. Hugo Ekitike is prepared to wait for Liverpool to almost say, yes, we want you, or sorry, we've moved on, and then he will do the same. And even that from Fabrizio Romano, literally a couple of days ago, that still in active contact, nothing's advanced, still could be possible, as we've said, to drop the price. It's still possible. So it does feel like the same names that are coming up. And as me and you always say, it's not about bragging, but we've said this for 5-6 weeks in a row now, and people are like, yeah, I'm not sure. Well, all the journos are saying the same stuff, so I don't really know what more you want us to tell you in that regard. And the other thing we've mentioned as well is striker-wise, we'll talk about another one, but Diogo Jota as well. There's still a collection of clubs that have got interest in Diogo Jota. The big thing to say is he's not their first choice. He's a bit like the Ekitike for Liverpool in that sense. And you understand that as well, don't you? Because you look at Diogo Jota's injury record and, well, we can all see what we can see there. So he was bound to be down the list of a few. But if they don't get their top targets, if things don't materialise how they want, an experienced Premier League striker could well be on the list and jump to the top of it for a lot of those clubs. But Liverpool are expecting, if it is for Jota, later in the window, when other sides have probably tried and failed for first choices and they ran back to it, a bit like would happen with Ekitike if it does unfold. So, yeah, it sounds a similar beat, but that is what we're getting. We're double checking it. There's the information, people.
Just three things, Shahid, the man you mentioned, we will be speaking about later on, as Dave has alluded to. So you can be aware that that's coming up. Dave, on the Isak thing, when you say you feel it's unlikely, and then you went on to talk about how, well, Newcastle are actually starting to talk about money now, which makes it quite real, as opposed to like sneering. Do you feel it's unlikely because it will get to a fee where we just go, oh, look, that's just too much, and the club won't be willing to do it? Is that where, because we have been told, haven't we, that there is a distinct interest on the part of the player in coming to Liverpool? Yeah. So I wonder, is that your where you think it'll fall down ultimately if it does?
Yeah, I do think that the total price. I mean, I have to be honest, he's got a great goals record from last season. but there are a few question marks against his injury record. And personal opinion, if you are spending the 130 million probably plus it's going to take to get him, I think we both said this, I would rather Julian Alvarez. I am not convinced that Alexander Isak, even if you can get him for 130, 140 million, whatever it's going to take, represents good value. And you are gambling a fair bit on his injury record there as well. So his age comes into it as well. He's probably at the peak as he's about to be 26, isn't he? So next year he'll be 27. I keep hearing people say, oh, we wait a year. Would Liverpool wait a year for a 27-year-old striker?
No.
I'm not too sure or remotely convinced about that. So it does feel like now or never. And I could be wrong on this. He's Liverpool's top target, and we've got shrewd people negotiating. But just for all those reasons, and also the fact I think there'll come a point where Liverpool want to move on. They'll kind of put a deadline to want to get a number 9 in and embed or an alternate forward. So I just can't see it happening for all those reasons.
Last thing then, just on the points that you've made, I wanted to ask you about was the Jota story. The tweet that I forwarded to you, I'm not sure how spurious that source is. Regardless, there was a number involved. And it was a number which I'd heard previously as well. And again, these things can just sort of grow legs, and then all of a sudden they're the accepted wisdom, or the received wisdom at least. What do you think would represent a decent price for Liverpool for Diogo Jota? Because if I'm being honest, it's somewhere in the ballpark of the thing that we had seen today, where a lot of people will wince. But I think if you were getting somewhere between 35 and 40 million for Diogo Jota, I'm sorry, but I think that represents very good business for a lad who can sometimes look as if he's made out of crisps.
Yeah, it's for all the great bits that Diogo Jota's done, and even like last season, his goal against Everton, you remember that. At times, he looks like a competition winner, if you're honest. He's injured a lot. It's really not been a good season. And I just think when you start to stack the facts of his lack of goals, his injury record, not just this season, but going back as well, 28 years old, Trev, 2 years left on his deal. I honestly think 40 million or a little bit north of that doesn't represent bad value at all, in all honesty, for me. I really think that. And I don't know if it'll happen because we'll have to see what develops. But there's a bit of me would love to see that put on the table to the powers that be. And do they back themselves to like, yeah, we can get an alternative for that. We can ship him out. We can get a younger player in. I just have a suspicion they do business on just north of 40 million.
Yeah. Seems good to me. I think it would represent really good deal for the club. And again, we say these things, don't we, Dave? And you can get sort of metaphorically two-footed in the comment sections and by people who think you're talking about moving chess pieces around. We've been printed on these players, look, just like anybody else. He seems like a great lad. I don't want to see him leave, but we do seem to be approaching this very cynical period where we're overhauling the squad. So that's all we're talking about in that regard. The next story that we want to look at is one that's been very, very prominent in news. And if Jarell Quansah has gone out, then obviously we have to address that. I've heard you talk about how you wouldn't mind going into next season with a foursome of Van Dijk and Konate and Joe Gomez and Mark Guéhi, who's hugely linked to the club. There's obviously something there in a very strong way. But what really took my interest was this notion of we might be prepared to wait a year for this guy. And that would be a little bit different than waiting for a 27-year-old striker.
Yeah.
What's the latest on us, Palace, Guéhi? I know they've been looking at a guy by way of replacement, haven't they? Or at least in the same position.
Yeah, I don't think there's any surprise that Liverpool are looking at Mark Guéhi, aren't they, as a serious option. Would suit the homegrown quota. England international, experienced leader, seen to be a great character. From just delving into all this and speaking to people even today in the last few hours, it does all seem like one big game between Liverpool and Steve Parish and Crystal Palace, that everyone's putting stories out from sides, aren't they? That always prepared to wait on a free, but he's only got 12 months, he won't renew and all that. It's all just the suggestions are part of a game that ultimately Crystal Palace they're not that club. They don't want to let him go on a free. Ultimately, they're a club that could do with those funds coming in, couldn't they? But at the same time, want to negotiate the top price. Liverpool are also shrewd negotiators, and it's one of those ones that, as people are suggesting, where it's never this simplistic, don't get me wrong, but Liverpool want to come in at 30. Palace probably think 50 or a little bit above. Does a compromise get met somewhere around 40 to 45 million, which in the grand scheme of things, if he is, what would you say, £5-10 million or whatever, more expensive than Jarell Quansah, I still think that's decent value for money based on his profile, his England caps, and all that type of thing. And I honestly stand by this, Trev, personally, that four centre-back options of VVD, Konate, Guéhi and Gomez, and probably I know people would love a fifth. I get that at the same time, but Guéhi is a more reliable. He plays a lot of games, a lot of minutes, isn't it? So it gives you a more sustainable backup than just Joe Gomez there. I don't think that's a bad foursome to compete on all fronts, personally, anyway. And other sort of stuff that's mentioned in this article, this fascinates me. I've got to be honest, and we got a bit on this today. Liverpool is still looking, apparently, for the VVD replacement, the one to sort of carry that mantle forward. Now, this one, we got a bit of info for him. The reason he's on sort of the picture for this show, Jarell Hatto, this bit fascinates me that Virgil van Dijk loves this kid, sings his praises, saying playing from him at the national, this kid is the one, and almost the, I baptize you, me in the future type of thing that way, which is interesting. But on the analyst side, they're like, well, this kid hasn't really played centre-back in a year. It's the area division. We know, with the greatest respect, how far down that is from the Premier League. We've got real concerns about his physicality. And in fact, from the analyst side that we got today, there's almost a feeling that it's a little bit like, do you remember when Fergie picked Moisey? And it's like, look how that worked out type of thing. Just because you are elite doesn't mean you pick the best successor. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this. The VVD is big on this kid, but sort of the analyst side and that aren't too much. So I'm not saying it's a power struggle, but it's just something to consider there. And Castello Lucaba is the other one that, yeah, they like him, but it's a big price tag that Red Bull Leipzig are looking for as well. So that comes into the mix. So they have to be almost certain, shall we say, that, he's the right one. I'm not sure. I might be wrong again, but there didn't seem to be the warmth or feeling for that price or that amount. And I can see already people are throwing in other names. No, we've got nothing on any other names. We can only deal with what we're told in that regard. Diomande, you mentioned as well. Strange, because we were linked with him for quite a while, but it does seem that Palace are in talks. It doesn't seem like we're going to hijack that. And I don't know, maybe that's part of the agreement towards the Guéhi thing or a way of smoothing it over. Who knows realistically? But all that comes into the mix. Ibu Konate, there's still uncertainty around him. There's a Guardian report today saying he's unhappy, but again, family members of his were tweeting that, no, that's not the case, but we're not hearing anything positive about that. The final positive bit I can give you, Trev, Nat Phillips is free or about to be free. So honestly, there's just 1,000,001 things going on in the centre-back space right now. I genuinely wouldn't say for definite whether we'd end up with 4 centre-halves or a fifth that, could cover like full-back, like a Hatter, as people would say, at a push in centre-back. And I wouldn't definitely or definitively say who they are. There's just a lot set to unfold in this role in the next few weeks.
The Konate thing, there was a little wrinkle there today. You can never trust these things completely, but apparently he did some sort of social media post about talking too much. You talk too much. That was my translation of the French. Whether that was real or not, I don't know. But again, it's very interesting. It seems to be following a similar path to the Mo and Virgil contract wrangles, we have to remember that they seemed to be, especially Salah's at one stage, very contentious and not at all positive. And the updates we were getting were quite dark. And most people were a little bit sick at the idea of what was going on. So worth to remember that. Oh, official Nat Phillips news.
I just got a message saying, check the official website. There you go. Nat Phillips, West Brom, with add-ons, 3 million quid.
Free at last. I would have paid 3 million quid to get Nat Phillips some career time. Poor bastard. The other name you've mentioned there in that little addition to our plan is Harvey Davies. What was the angle there?
Yeah, he's set to go on loan to Crawley for the season. I think a lot of people thought he would be the third choice keeper, because of his age and his quota. But it does look like they're going to go with the young lad Pesci, the Hungarian they've signed, that it will be Alisson, Marmadashvili. Pesci will be around the under-21s and maybe at a push might get a bit of game time in cups or possibly something like that.
Can I ask you just on the Mark Guéhi thing, because there's way too much going on here for it not to be a thing. And I wonder too if the whole we might be prepared to wait a year isn't to just rattle them a bit more and say, okay, we'll take a bit less, because they are in a bit of a crappy position with the duration of his contract and all the rest of it. If it's money, it's money. As simple as that. Do you think there's anything there where there might be actually a player that they have their eye on too? I mean, would a Harvey Elliott represent a really attractive piece of business for them, or would he be someone they're interested in, or would he be interested in them? Is there anyone else maybe on our staff? Jota, for example, the aforementioned, would he be someone who they might be interested in taking as well, in a way that we were talking about before, where the numbers could be sort of massaged?
Yeah, Liverpool love a good exchange deal, and it never just a straight swap, as we know. Like, you look at the Leverkusen situation, and it's funny that everyone seems to be suggesting that Quansah and Wirtz are directly linked, and I understand because they're from the same club. My actual understanding is it relates more towards the Frimpong deal. Do you remember that was about 30 million quid? That actually there's almost an understanding between Liverpool and Leverkusen that no money will exchange hands on that deal. The Frimpong and Quansah is like, you give us one, we give you one type of thing. So Liverpool are not amidst that. And again, you look at certain things. Palace have got an interest in Harvey Elliott. Palace had a bid for Ben Doak, didn't they? Do you remember rejected it in January? So that comes into the mix. And Eze is liked by a lot of clubs, Spurs especially. So it is all possible, but I'm lying if I said I've got anything on that. I do just think this whole Guéhi, Palace, Liverpool thing is about posturing and getting the right price more than anything. If you ask me to bet right now, I suspect Mark Guéhi ends up a Liverpool player around 40 million-ish or so.
I gotta say, I'm very, very good with that. I've always thought he was a great footballer. The height thing kept getting thrown into the conversation, but you never know what the evolution of Liverpool's defense might look like, and therefore the old profiling was a Jurgen Klopp era profiling, so we can't just always go with that. There will be more changes, it would appear, in the defense. We've already lost our world-class right back, and it looks like we could be about to lose our one-time world-class left back in Andy Robertson, and we have a hopeful wannabe world-class left back about to arrive. So there's lots going on here. The Robbo to Atletico stuff rumbles away in the background. Kerkez is apparently doing bits at the moment, medical wise. We saw pictures, you and I, of him with his family on a plane coming to Liverpool. Seems to be very much enjoying the focus and the camera attention. They're obviously very excited about it. A lot of people have been rubbed the wrong way by his overt machinations and declarations and the way his father spoke, and said, well, if that was a Liverpool player, what would you think, etc., etc. And I get all that. I really do. I genuinely get it.
Yeah.
And I understand there's a little bit of two-facedness when I'm giddy enough about a fella doing that. I will say it doesn't sit great with me. I don't like it. But, you know, in the greater scheme of things, it's not something I'm going to lose sleep about. Where do you stand on that little part of this? Tell us what you know about the Kerkez deal, where we are with it, because like with the Florian Wirtz one, it seems to be just a little bit more drawn out than people would like. And is there any more on the Robertson to Atleti story?
Yeah, the Florian Wirtz is on Merseyside right now, isn't he? He landed about 4 o'clock this afternoon. The old plane spotters were doing their bit, and the videos of him landing as he did. If we go back a bit though, as is on the screen, we had the Kerkezers doing the photo, didn't they, in the private jet? I mean, let's be honest. We've had Milos putting Instagram things, eyes and likes on everything. We've had his brother doing the same. We've had him and his dad on Serbian TV, haven't they, doing interviews about the Liverpool move and all those types of things. I'm going to be honest, Trev. I think Liverpool are missing a trick, because we did the documentary with Jurgen Klopp, didn't we? And they got a few million off that. A serialized At Home with the Kerkezers will bang. I promise you. Like, can you imagine, like, episode 4, like one of those narrators, like Richard Hughes drops by to the Formby penthouse again as more revelations are revealed. Which Kerkez tweeted the team news on social media this time, just with Dad and Milos looking a bit guilty as Richard Hughes is giving them death stares. Honestly, I think it could be. They just look characters, don't they? All round. Have we seen them on TV? It's just different to maybe what we're used to, but I don't mind it at all. And it's around 40 million. And the one thing I like about this and Florian Wirtz, starters, aren't they? Don't care what anyone says. Florian Wirtz straight in the starting 11. For me, Milos Kerkez straight in the starting 11. And that's not to be derogatory to Robbo, a Liverpool legend, but we talked about this. I don't think that would surprise anyone. Milos Kerkez is not costing 40 million to come and play 1,000 minutes and develop under Robbo. I think people need to clear that out their heads if they've got it in there straight away. And that leads to Robbo, doesn't it? That, as all the reports last week were, he's considering what he wants to do. I think all the traffic's going one way. I mean, it's a chance to move to a club on a longer-term deal with only a year left at Liverpool, where you'd be back up, a new culture, all that type of thing as well. I just think it's a great move. And all the noises are that he's open and receptive to it. And when Kerkez gets announced, I'm not saying that means they'll happen concurrently, but I suspect in the next week or so, we get the announcement that Robbo's decided to move on. And the other thing to remember, as people have talked about, Atletico won't hold on forever, will they? They'll also put a timescale on this, won't they? To say, well, you don't just wait till the end of August, for instance. We need to put a date on this, because we need to look at alternatives as well. So I do think ultimately, good signing for us, a starting 11, and eventually it will have the knock-on effect of Robbo moving to Madrid.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of At Home with the Kerkezes. Let's make this real. You and I'll pitch it. Maybe we can get a Netflix deal for ourselves. The one thing I would say on the Robbo thing is, I'm sure you'd be in agreement. He's been such a star for the club that you'd love him to go, and I think he will back himself to go to Atleti. They have been, it has to be admitted, they have been looking at Luca Dean as a preference.
Yeah.
And that is, that's something to bear in mind. That may factor into it. Robbo's pride may not really be too happy with that situation. But I would wish him nothing but the best. I think it could be a potential like resurgence for him for a few years.
Yeah.
I'd love it for him. I think it makes all the sense in the world, this move, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also you look at the style of teams. Atletico Madrid under Cholo Simeone, they play that quite often, that 4-5-1, don't they? They are a defensive team. That's not to be derogatory. That's just the style that they play. They're a team that suits defenders rather than attackers ultimately, aren't they? They don't concede that many goals. So actually, in a solid 4-5-1 at left back, that can actually help Robbo a bit, can't he? Now he's got that extra protection in the system that way as well. So I do think for so many reasons, this is a good move all round.
There's one little wrinkle in it as well. I saw that the balking point, the reason why they stopped their pursuit of Luca Dean was money. And then I read what the money was, and it was somewhere around £10 million. I was thinking, Jesus, okay. So I guess we're not getting any money for Robbo or anything worth a damn, like just north of what we got for Nat Phillips, it would appear. And then, of course, there's the Trent's brother agent angle, and they love to manufacture a situation like that. So regardless of our sentiment about the player going there, I think it's going to have some interesting wrinkles, this one, and there will be potentially a little bit of bad feeling if it goes a certain way, because there are people out there, I'm not saying our intelligent viewers and listeners, but there are people out there who will be expecting to get 20 or 30 million for Andy Robertson. They just don't use their brains. So what's your take on that particular aspect of it?
Yeah, I've seen that. Some people, I've seen that as well. People are always definitely worth 20 million. I mean, with the greatest respect to him, a year left on his deal, the age he is currently, the way his career's going, trajectory-wise, you've got to factor that in, because whenever you're buying someone, it's like, which way is it going? So all that, you probably would land on, I don't know, with experience, leadership, if you want to pay a premium for that, you probably are talking somewhere, for me, around 10 to 15 million. That would what I would say on his realistic market value. But, because of the situation, I honestly think we'll have to see. But, one of those like nominal fees, but respectful, something like 7 million. And Liverpool will actually be all right with that, because it's 7 million on the books, but it's his wages off them at the same time, aren't they? Because Robbo, people forget this. Robbo was on one of the old style incremental contracts that Jurgen Klopp used to give, as in the one that would go up each year to reward loyalty. So Robbo's wages have just gone up and up and up. So in that regard, I don't think they'll be sad to get him off the books that way at all.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes all the sense for us, I think. Our next story that we want to cover is going towards forwards. And again, I understand we're still teasing here. There are more Liverpool forward stories to come. You know who they are. We're going to get there. Don't worry about it. But there's some new ones here, not necessarily number 9s, but attacking players with a sort of versatility to them. I know you spoke to Lewis Steele about this as a topic, and there are a few names on the go. One in particular is doing the rounds over the last couple of days, and one is coming back from the dusty halls of the past, and one has just never gone away, much to our disappointment. Talk to us about these versatile forwards we're being linked with. And when you think about Liverpool being actively interested in these, are they Luis Diaz replacements? Are they Cody Gakpo replacements? Again, we're coming to those stories, folks. But what's the idea in terms of the motivation of us looking for this? It seems almost like a luxury, doesn't it, at this stage when you look at the profile of our squad?
Yeah, it does seem to be the briefing to Patch Journos and across the board that Liverpool, as well as the 9, are also looking at the option of a forward that can play across the front line. And I'm just going to be deadly honest about this, Trev, because about 5 or 6 weeks ago, roughly, we said on this show, the info we were getting is Liverpool were looking at a 9 and a forward who could play wide but also cover the 9. We were really clear on that. And we gave the names like Liverpool have looked at, whether we like it or not, and I don't, Anthony Gordon. Liverpool had looked at Rodrigo, at those types. As is on the screen now, Malik Fofana, another name coming back and doing the rounds. And being honest, digging on all these names, do you know what the answer is? Yes. That's all we kept getting back. Have Liverpool spoken to this player? Yes. Have Liverpool spoken to his agent? Yes. Liverpool are just lining up almost, I would say ducks in a row, but like contingencies and all these options to then decide where they're going to pull the trigger on. And I think you're right to mention the other part. I do think it will be linked to if or when they can do the outgoings of certain players as well. And that will define maybe who does ultimately get moved for it as well. But Liverpool are genuinely speaking to a number of agents and players. I don't really think we could have spelt that out more clearly. I mean, we even said on the Friday, wasn't it, the last show, they've been in in-depth conversations with USG, which is the agency for both Guéhi and Anthony Gordon, about both those players. So it generally would not surprise me at all if both of those ended up at Anfield next season. Would it surprise me if alternatively it is a Malik Fofana? No. Liverpool are looking at all different players. That's why it's just so hard. This is just so different to other summers where we kind of knew like 3 or 4 and it's going to be one of these and we're not going to change from that list. In the most exciting way for us, it's as hard as ever to predict. But long story short, are Liverpool looking at versatile forwards that can play across the front lines, we said before? Yes.
Plates are spinning. Plates are spinning all across the country, all across the continent. The Reds are really, really interested in doing business. That's what you need to know. And as you say, it will all depend on what pieces need to be replaced, who can be sold and at what price and all the rest of it. And we all have our opinions on all the different players. I see them very strongly expressed in the chat, and fair play. But, according as anything becomes real, we will hopefully be the first to talk to you about it. Not that you listen. Nobody listens to us, Dave. As you said, we keep saying these things and people are popping up as if it's news 5 or 6 weeks later. But anyway, let's get round the Premier League so we can get back to our last section, which also brings us back to Liverpool. And we'll start with Nottingham Forest, who have at least 4 bits of business on the go.
Yeah, fair play to them, because they've not really given us the last window, that one where they signed about 74,000 players, but they're in Europe and renewals have been the name of the game, and they've got 4 done. As you can see on the screen, they got the manager. So Nuno's got looking forward to Mavropanos or whatever shouting at him or coming onto the pitch and giving him a bashing for the next 3 years or so. Nico Williams, the former Liverpool fullback, he signed an extension. So's Ola Aina, the right back, who we were linked with at one time, and Willy Bowley. So those 2 players have done a year's extension. It is interesting, though, Forest, a little bit, because they're not really signed anyone, have they? And everyone knows they'll have a bit of money that the owner's prepared to invest. They're in Europe. So it will be interesting to see when they decide to pull the trigger. And even that Anthony Elanga Newcastle move is still lingering in the background as well. So everyone's a bit wondering when Forest are going to get going.
Chelsea, however, look to be, for once, linked with more lads leaving than lads coming to the club. I know there's a Nicholas Jackson story. There's a Christopher Nkunku story. Even Madueke, I think. And they have kept an eye on a PSG starlet as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. They've been trying for so many and it didn't really seem to be getting anywhere. But as came up via L'Equipe, that Randall Kolo Muani, the PSG, former Frankfurt forward, they have entered into negotiations. I mean, that just feels like a Chelsea player. Another one who's not a proper striker but can play wide type of thing, an alternative that way. As you mentioned, we've said before, Noni Madueke, I mean, this was even in the last few hours. Arsenal have been speaking to Chelsea about them around a 50 million quid, which doesn't look a goer now, but maybe coming back to in the summer at the same time. You also mentioned another one there. Don't know if we've got him on the screen, but Nkunku, isn't it? The Chelsea forward who's clearly out of favour, 27 years old. United now in the mix for him, Trev, having a solid look. And that does feel like a Manchester United signing, doesn't it? One who's a bit past his best or it's not worked out, so ends up delivering a massive fee there. But even the forwards they're looking at, I mean, Nicholas Jackson's brilliant. He just keeps getting sent off in every game he plays, doesn't he? He gets the straight red against Newcastle. He gets the straight red in the Club World Cup. So they're looking now possibly at trying to shift him, and Juventus have been linked. But what will you get for the madman who keeps getting sent off like Duncan Ferguson style, but without the fists involved? So it is interesting. And Chelsea, for me, they always bring excitement every window, as we know, but they just seem to be stuttering, don't they, in what they're trying to do right now. I am intrigued to see how the rest of their window unfolds.
You know, there will be at least 1 or 2 things that just have us, aghast with actual delight at the craziness of it, because that's just what they do. Fulham up next, looking to maybe bring back a player and a few other bits and pieces. Talk to us about Fulham and the business they're hoping to do.
Yeah, the João Paulinho, that Portuguese destroyer who went for big money for the second time around, because he missed it first time, didn't he? Now being linked with a return to Fulham. It's been a bit of a disaster at Bayern, and he's not the only midfielder to sort of fall by the wayside at that team. So various reports that Fulham are looking to bring him back with a loan and seeing how it goes from there. So we'll keep an eye on that one. And the other one that they didn't re-sign him, Ekitike, their fullback, the Dutch player. I think he is 33, 34 now. So where are you going to end up? Everton. Everton are set to bag him on a free, which just sounds like an Everton player as well, doesn't it? Which you would also think, because he can play right back and left back, it probably puts the move for Kyle Walker in doubt a little bit as well, doesn't it, realistically, if they're going to sign Ekitike on a free. So, yeah, Everton and Wolves doing bits. We'll see if both come to fruition.
Yeah, I just got sent something there that it said basically Ibu Konate had rejected a deal today. That would just be another little wrinkle into our early story. I can't confirm or deny. Dave, have you heard anything on this?
That was what it said in the Guardian article that came out today. But sort of digging into it, none of the UK side have had that. No real developments either way since then.
Cool. We'll finish with Bournemouth and Arsenal in the Premier League. I'm not looking forward to the Arsenal bit, I'll tell you, at all. But let's start with Bournemouth first. 1 in, 1 out from what you happen to have here, I think. And a little bit of Semenyo talk as well.
Yeah, it was an Austin bomber, wasn't it? That Spurs had inquired over Semenyo, but the valuation was too high for them. I mean, the thing is, if you're going to Bournemouth, Trev, not that they want to be, but they're stacked with cash now, aren't they? Because they just got 50 million from Huijsen. They've just got about to get 40 million quid from us for Kerkez. And it looks like, as well to mention, Zabiani, that's set to get done, isn't it? The suspicion is for around 55 to 60 million quid. So, A, Bournemouth don't want to sell. And B, if they are going to, they're going to charge you a king's ransom, aren't they? Because they're flush with cash, even if they don't want to be. So I just don't see this getting done. I don't see Semenyo leaving. I like the player, but he's 25. And the suggestions are they're demanding sort of 70 million as a starting point. And I do like the player, but 70 million for that output is a big stretch there, in all honesty. And also a player that you almost forget is at Bournemouth, or was at Bournemouth, I should say. Max Aarons, the right back, was at Norwich, linked with us many moons ago. He is set to head to Glasgow Rangers on loan as well. I think the big thing that Bournemouth have got, I mean, they've got Trev in and they're looking at a lot of options. They're in this position now. They are awash with cash and everyone knows it. So if Bournemouth come in for your player, 30 becomes 40, doesn't it? 50, 60 and so on, because you know they're flush with cash at the same time. You want to take your share. So I just think Bournemouth are my ones to have a real struggle this year because of the amount they've lost and how they're going to struggle to replace those players as well.
The two last stories were like ghosts of Liverpool transfer windows past, with Paulinho and Max Aarons. That's mad. Yeah. Two players we've also been linked with are Zubamendi and Gyökeres. And Zubamendi, it looks, is finally ready to tearfully turn his back on the mountains and actually make the move to Arsenal. And it's not very encouraging to hear that so is Victor Gyökeres. He is being described now as likely to be an Arsenal player. I would, and I'm going to be completely honest about that, I would take both of those players at the drop of a hat. At Liverpool, maybe not all mountain nonsense now. He seems a little bit flaky, but he's a very good footballer. There's no denying the quality that he has. And if he could do a big job for Arsenal. And Gyökeres, I am convinced, could actually tear the Premier League up. Hopefully, I'm going to be wrong if he goes to Arsenal. But again, I wouldn't have been at all sad if Liverpool had ended up focusing their attention on him. Just again, it's just a feeling. Are these real? These links? Is it finally over the line with Zubimendi? And this Gyökeres thing, like I say, keeps getting presented almost as a fait accompli now.
Yeah, Zubimendi, they've agreed to pay a bit extra to split the release clause, haven't they, over instalments that way. He's been round Arsenal headquarters. I think we're all just waiting for the announcement and the mountains in the background in London type of thing to get all that one sorted and confirmed. As it also looks like real expectation that Thomas Partey won't renew as well. So I think it'll be one midfielder in, one midfielder out is the big expectation. But the striker one's been fascinating because this has been reverberating round for the last month or so, hasn't it? And trying to dig a bit on this, because not that we're massively interested in Arsenal, but just speaking to a few journos, I'm not saying it's a battle, that would be too extreme, but Berta, their new sporting director's in charge there, and obviously Arteta's always had a say in how it works. And it seems to be that in one camp's the Sesko fan club, and in one camp's the Gyökeres fan club. But because of the way it's worked and the suggestions of the package that's going to be needed for Sesko, and Gyökeres' keenness to come to Arsenal is apparently set to seal the day, that he's told other clubs Arsenal is his first port of call. That's where he wants to go. That's where he expects to end up. So a lot of journos have that suspicion that it will be Gyökeres that comes in. And a bit like you, I'm fascinated to see how this ends up. Gyökeres speaks to me of no in between, success or flop. Yep. That's how he will be judged. There'll be no in between. He will either bag goals or he'll look like a donkey pulling a cart type of thing. I don't think there will be any in between. And it doesn't usually work any other way because of the pressure at a club like that competing for the title in that essence. So I am intrigued to see what eventually happens. But yeah, that was the update. A lot of journos suggesting that there is now the suspicion that it will be Gyökeres coming in to the Emirates.
Now, I do believe we're going to do a show, possibly the first one in a long time, which has no Saudi talk at all, as we move into Europe in general. But I could be wrong here. Maybe you'll find an angle for me. Maybe you'll pull a lever before the end of it here. Let's start with Bayern Munich. And this is where we get our first link back to Liverpool. And we'll finish with a Liverpool-related story as well. But a lot of people will have had their eyebrows jumping off their forehead when they saw the stories during the week linking Bayern with interest in not only Luis Diaz, but also Cody Gakpo. It's wild. And the story included Max Eberl's name as well. I don't know if that was to give it extra heft or because it was real or what's going on there. Talk to us about what's going on with Bayern, because there's other players, big players as well, who have maybe, I don't know if they're more likely. And there's at least one major player who Liverpool, maybe it was a fanciful link in Barcola, who apparently seems to have said no to Bayern.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a disastrous summer, I think it's fair to say, for Bayern so far, isn't it? As in not being able to land the targets, the Florian Wirtz situation, others kind of pulled away for them. And it did look like, as we said last week, Nico Williams, by all accounts, had given priority to Barcelona. So they've been linked with 1,000,001 left wingers, haven't they? We've talked about Leao before, Mitoma. You mentioned our boy, Cody Gakpo. He'd been linked with them. That links back again as well. Even Martinelli, the Arsenal boy, that's come onto the radar at the same time as well. But the big thing around this was, because of what's happening and the lack of happiness, shall we say, in that Viper's nest at Bayern, Max Eberl flew back to Germany from the Club World Cup for talks, apparently, with the Bayern board and the inner circle, which had the suggestion of the WTF Max type of thing. Why are we getting no one over the line? What's going on? So he's gone there, now back apparently in America for the Club World Cup. And lo and behold, what comes out? I think it was literally yesterday, wasn't it? This one that it does feel a bit like they might be pissing in the wind, but they have gone again for Nico Williams. They are basing it on the fact that, well, Barca's cash flow is always suspect, isn't it? A little bit that way. So can they trump it, put an offer in, get the player on board on massive wages and go for it that way? I think I've got a few question marks around that, to be honest. I'm not sure it will bear through. But as you mentioned there as well, Barcola linked with many a club. There's a lot of clubs would love to have him in their ranks. But Mendes and his gang have told all these clubs like Bayern, no, PSG are planning for him in their midst next season. So you've not got a chance with this one. But yeah, Bayern are just almost not saying they're losing the window because it's too early doors and there's a lot that could happen, but they're not getting it over the line. And you just feel like Max might have got a little bit of a telling off from Big Uli, and Karl-Heinz might have just had something to say to him, shall we put it that way?
I can't believe they're setting themselves up as hostages to fortune with that Nico Williams thing, because it looks like he wants to move to Barca and Barca want him and he's their player of interest. Why would they set themselves up to be defeated yet again, as you say, to lose the transfer window so spectacularly? It's an odd one. It's an odd one. We'll watch it with interest. Like you said, the Viper's Nest there is always of interest. And you've mentioned Barcelona and Nico Williams already. Anything else going on with them in terms of ins and outs? We had the last day the clarification that they were at last able to deal in a kind of one in, one out style, that they had at least that kind of a ratio that they could do. If they could sell, then they could buy the equivalent. What way are things looking for them now in terms of how far on the Nico Williams thing is and any other ins and outs?
Yeah, it's a bit weird, this one. And we'll have to see how it bears out, because I mean, it's quite clear Nico Williams given priority. They're trying to do that deal and free up the finances. But at the same time, this has been one of the big stories that Rooney, we'll call him, that's his first name. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his surname at Copenhagen, but his name's Rooney. However, he is not bald and he is not fat. He is a winger that plays on the left and the right side, apparently. And they're looking to do this deal. And there's apparently a talented kid. There's a lot of Europe's clubs are watching him. But around 1.2 million quid, 2 million euros, Trev. And this has just thrown up a few questions like, are they doing this because they maybe can't actually afford the Nico Williams? Is there something like that in that regard? We'll have to see how this unfolds. But the other thing that Barca are being quite clear on is they've been honest. They're saying we're keeping Ronald Araujo around, but the former Chelsea boy, the other centre-back, Andreas Christensen, up for sale. And Deco said, as well as Laporta, we've got one centre-half too many, so we want to clear one out. And the suspicion is it will be Christensen as well. And then, funny, because Mark ter Stegen, there's question marks around his future, isn't there? Because they've just bought Juan Garcia in, the former La Masia product, the goalkeeper. Deco got asked about ter Stegen, he's experienced, he's got all this thing, will he stay? And in true Machiavellian style, he kind of went, not my job to pick him. It's up to the coach. I won't give players any reassurance over the future. If he wants that, he's got to speak to the coach type of thing. So, yeah, there may well be some question marks around Mark ter Stegen's future at the same time as well.
Yeah, that's been an interesting little one rumbling under the surface there. We saw some interesting video, didn't we, in the wake of their victory. We'll quickly go to Turkey before we're landing on Napoli, where we can bring in Chiesa and Nunez. And when we do the Turkey one, you're going to be mentioning Victor Osimhen, who'll come back into it with the Napoli discussion. So first of all, Galatasaray and Fenerbahce looking to do bits.
Yeah, absolutely. Galatasaray, we know they've got Sané. They're still trying to do that Victor Osimhen deal, who he's just not being pushed on anything, apparently, Osimhen. And I don't blame him, because the less he says, the more Saudi drag a truck full of cash up to his front door, don't they? And Galatasaray just keep, and the Bashkans, as they call them, just keep increasing their offer at the same time. So fair play, Victor. I'd just keep silent until, you actually have to make a decision that way. But across the rivals, Fenerbahce, they're trying to do a striker as well at the same time, because they know they've got to react to the whole Leroy Sané, possibly Osimhen. Jonathan David has had an offer for them. And this is an interesting one with Jonathan David, because another player that just is silent. doesn't say much, but just keeps getting offers. Apparently, there's offers from the Premier League, like West Ham, Spurs, Napoli have made an offer to him, Fenerbahce. So, like a little bit like Osimhen, he's just sitting tight and seeing what the ruck of cash is that rocks up to his door at the same time. And then the other one to mention, Juan Duran. Do you remember the former Aston Villa forward who is currently an Al Nassr striker in Saudi Arabia? There's still a fair few reports from the Turkish side that Fenerbahce are trying to do a loan deal for him because he's not really happy in Saudi at the moment. So we'll see what that develops. But fair play to sort of the Turkish side. They've not always, not disrespectfully, been involved in our transfer window, but it looks like they're having a proper crack at it right now.
Really does. Some great stories there. And we have gone officially along. We've gone north of the hour, so you're getting value for your no money that you're paying to watch this show or listen to it. If you're listening on the free side, we have a final story for you, though, and it does bring in some Liverpool connections. Darwin Nunez to Napoli is something that's been rumbling along, and it's been at various states of realism over the last little while. Apparently today we got the news that Darwin has said yes, he's up for the move. Chiesa was being rattled into this as well as part of whether it was a fanciful connection or what, or whether Napoli genuinely have interest in Chiesa. I don't know why they wouldn't, to be honest. And then, of course, that brings back Osimhen into the question as well, doesn't it? So talk to us about this, because this is very exciting for us, because there are at least a couple of options now for Liverpool in terms of outgoings here. And there's at least one really interesting, if highly unlikely, sort of one of those exchangey type things we were talking about. Obviously, exchange plus cash. So talk us through this whole Napoli, Nunez, Chiesa, Osimhen, and apparently there's even a Sancho angle here.
This is strange because there's noise galore from the Napoli side, isn't there? All the journalists like Di Maurizio, the Italian journalists around Darwin Nunez and Napoli. And even as Fabrizio Romano said, he is their dream target, that until they know they cannot get Nunez, they're not going to move on to any other striker. He is their number one target. It seems, lined in across the board. But you're not getting this for any patch journos, are you, in the UK side? It's a little bit strange. But exactly as you mentioned, that even today, sort of lunchtime, all the reports came out from the Italian side and Romano saying that Darwin's happy, he's given the green light. It's now into negotiations. And also, as you mentioned there, again, from the Italian side, that there's been talks around, could Osimhen be in a swap deal with Chiesa and Nunez? Cash, what do we value these players at? That's come into the mix at the same time. So that's on the table. The only big thing you can get from trying to dig around, and you really can't get much from sort of the UK journo side, but sort of if you reach out a bit further, is everyone has said you are mental dealing with Napoli. Napoli are a nightmare to deal with in terms of their owner is an absolute wild card, De Sanchez. We've talked before about how he'll send players to prison camp with the manager when he's not playing well, almost threaten to refuse to pay them, if they lose a few games and that type of thing. A real wild card character. And the other thing that's come out from Napoli as well, I know you love a little bit of sub-stories, is he will just overrule his sporting director at times as well. The sporting director will do a deal and agree it with the club and have it all lined up, and then take it to the president and will go, we're not paying that. No, even though that sporting director's just kind of promised it, lined it all up and got it done. That De Sanchez will just change his mind on a coin or just authorize deals himself a little bit. So you have to be careful who we're getting into bed a little bit if there is real truth to this. The other thing to bring in the mark is, I know people, I think maybe just got a note of caution here, and I want to be wrong on this. Everyone's got Napoli will give us 50 million, maybe a bit more for Darwin, and we'll just take it and move on. That is not what we're hearing, is it, Trev? We've got to be clear on this, that I'd get ready for lowballing in a spectacular way. I really would, for when this does come out. I hope I'm wrong. I hope, it is an option that's viable, an amount that's viable as well. But just keep in mind all these factors. If you had any doubts on what I'm saying as well, they spoke to Jadon Sancho, who said, well, this is my wage I'm getting at United, which is ridiculous. I don't want to go back there. So, we have to make it work. Napoli had a chat and it didn't. And guess which sporting director went public, Trev, with this whole thing? There he is, Giovanni Manna, saying, our offer is clear. We will not pay Sancho's requested salary. I'm sure Jadon Sancho and his camp appreciated this becoming public. Players have every right to ask for the salary, and that's fine. However, look at this. When you're in a position like this, the priority should be getting your career back on track, not focusing on money. It's sad how many players in our squad have the wrong mentality. I'm sure his squad appreciated having just won the title and being labelled that way at the same time as well. It almost feels like football is never a priority for them. Considering we know Darwin Nunez was wanting to head to Saudi potentially, and the money and the wages and everything, I would just get ready for a low ball offer coming in, something maybe being made public from the Napoli side, but I wouldn't stick too many eggs in the baskets on Darwin eventually ending up at Napoli for all the reasons we've just said. Let's put it that way.
That guy's a savage. He's fantastic. I'm going to cut us off here, Dave, because like I say, we've gone to 106. But I do want to give you the last word. If there's anything else you were holding back, or just a general comment on the state of affairs, it is absolutely thrilling to be a Red at the moment. We are walking around, walking up the clubs and saying, we'll take your best, lad, and seeing what they do with it. And it is very exciting. Just your wrap-up thoughts, whatever they happen to be.
Great week. Whatever happens, and I could be wrong on this, but nothing you think is going to top Florian Wirtz. Don't let anyone else override that at all. I've seen people almost adding things like, what would you rate our transfer window so far? And I saw a couple of people put like 4 off. I'm like, 4 out of 10. We've just signed Florian Wirtz. We're about to sign Kerkez. That's 2 starters in the lineup. Like, give your head a wobble, first of all. And wider, don't forget that 30th of June deadline, for the PSR. Don't be surprised if maybe in the next week or so, you just see a move or moves from a few clubs, others looking at opportunities. So into next week as well, that 30th of June is one to keep an eye on.
Thanks to Dave for compiling all that information for the show today. Thanks to you for your attention, your comments, all your participation. Tell people about the show if you like it. It's very gratifying to hear that lots of you do. We appreciate the feedback. And Dave and I will be back with you, before the end of the week, because we just can't sit on top of these stories and not share them with you. So until then, good luck.